I would just like to say that even if the Christian Bible, even if every word of it is true, we can all agree that it was written about 2,000 years ago, which was the Bronze Age. So we done been fruitful and multiplied many times over. We can chill now. Hey guys, I am Devin Harrington, the average Gen Xer. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, thanks so much for stopping by. I would so love it if you would subscribe, like, leave a comment, all those great things. I would so appreciate it. So today we are finally reaching the fourth and final installment of our series, looking at the book No Kids, 40 Good Reasons Not to Have Children by French psychoanalyst Corinne Maier. And today we're looking at the last 10 reasons, number 31 to 40. So let's jump right into it. Reason number 31 of the 40 good reasons not to have children. Avoid benevolent neutrality like the plague. A baby, as they keep driving into us, is really a person. It's the shrinks that put that idea into our heads. And she goes on to describe some 20th century child psychologists. She continues, communicating with children does, of course, have a purpose, to make kids do what they're told. This is tough because parents don't give their kids orders anymore, resorting to more subtle means to keep them in their place. Parents no longer say no because, well, generally speaking, you just don't say no anymore. It's like your boss. He doesn't say no, he says maybe. Nobody in the world says no anymore. We have been everywhere, seen everything, explored the remotest planets and the most secret parts of the body. We have even shown light on the reproduction process. So, if you want to be a quote unquote good parent, at least the way society sees it, you have to be neutral. Above all, there can be no violence. To strike a child has become unthinkable. In Scandinavia, for example, corporal punishment within a family is forbidden by law. Interesting. As for me, Corinne shares a story from her own life. I admit it, slapped my son. I know these words are likely to be shocking to the sensitive reader and to earn me a denunciation down at the Child Protection Agency, but here are the facts. My son was tearing all over the municipal library, shouting and disturbing everyone, and refusing to listen to my reprimands. I slapped him. Evil had possessed me. A well-intentioned woman explained to me that it was monstrous to hit children. When I told her to mind her own ass, she threatened to call the police. Having kids means running a lot of risks, both with the authorities and with public opinion. And that's one of the many reasons why I never wanted to be bothered with having kids, having to discipline anyone, and of course, being Gen X, we were smacked upside the head all the time, and I didn't like it, and I didn't want to have to deal with little kids being brats, and where was the line, and particularly, I think, being embarrassed in public by children. I am just one of those people that scenes in public just make me want to die in that moment. I just cannot stand it when someone, whether it's good or bad, it could be, if I was ever with a guy that did something crazy, like got up on the table and declared his love, I mean, that would just be so embarrassing. Anyway, so a great reason not to have kids is you don't have to be embarrassed by them in public. 32. Parenthood is a sad, sweet song. Always happy, cheerful, and smiling, even when you are getting ragged on by your colleagues or your favorite uncle has just died. At work, People who deal with the public are supposed to demonstrate continuous enthusiasm. It's the same at home. They keep telling parents that you have to, quote unquote, keep the child active right from the earliest years. You're expected to discuss things with them, to cry bravo when they babble, to get them to play, to read books to them from birth, to sing them songs. And she goes on and on and on. And then she says, to pull off a performance like this, you have to be either an idiot or full of Prozac. And to anyone who's wondering, yes, I realize this book is written rather tongue in cheek. Corinne Maier does have two grown children. I think she's just writing this book from if I had it to do over again, I wish someone had told me this. I wish someone had given me this book. But the point remains that her points are all valid. These are all things that you will have to deal with, probably, and maybe worse, if you choose to have kids. Moving on, number 33. Motherhood is a trap for women. And this one I just feel so hard because I grew up watching my mother have to sacrifice herself just because she had kids. And it was one of the many, many reasons why I just thought this is bullshit. Anyway, Corinne opens this chapter. The cult of the child weighs heavily upon women. The modern woman must be a mother, an employee, and a friend all at once, preferably thin. And you have to admit that's a lot to ask. On top of that, women do 80% of the housework. And I have to say, I must be very naive that I thought here in the 21st century that would not be the case. But on the Regretful Parents subreddit, it seems that many, many regretful moms are women married to men or with men who don't do their share of the housework or the childcare. And I'm not saying that all men are like this. This is not a man-hating channel. I'm just saying it's shocking how often you hear that in regretful parents forums. Corinne goes on. Before the 20th century, there were very few examples of women writers, musicians, painters, or scientists. Maybe making children was a substitute. Creating a human being was perhaps seen as the equivalent of creating a work of art, as a substitute or as a last resort. And that's certainly true. You, especially in this day and age, you will be busy trying to feed and clothe and house your children, and you will be busy with them. And so you will not, unless you have all kinds of money to buy yourself all kinds of help and free time, you will not have time or energy for the most part. Another broad generalization, but it's generally true. That's another thing that you hear. Having kids just takes up so much time and energy that it burns up what you have left for yourself. And that's a common theme that you hear in the forums as well. And another reason why I selfishly chose consciously to never reproduce. I don't happen to feel any need to reproduce. So I can't really say, like, if I really desperately wanted a baby, I mean, I could get pregnant when I was fertile, and so I probably would have had a kid, but I personally never wanted kids, and I'm so thankful I live in a time and place where I was able to make my own choices. Okay, getting off the soapbox. Reason number 34, motherhood or success. Pick one. Working mothers are a majority now in Europe. And remember, this book came out, she's a French writer, and it came out in France in 2007 and then was released in the States in 2009. Corinne continues, French women are certainly the envy of the whole world. Daycares, state subsidies, generous maternity leave. Yes. I don't even have kids, and that just makes my mouth water. The time that the poor Murdouf, and remember, Murdouf is like the French word for soccer mom, the time that the poor Murdouf spends with her kids making meals, vacuuming, and telling silly stories is time she does not spend at work. And this chapter is basically going into some statistics about how women who have to take care of children earn about 150,000 to 225,000 less than they could have averaged out over their whole careers, and that is, like 2007 statistics. And I may get some shit for this, but personally, it's just my humble opinion that I think the best way for kids to be raised is to have any kind of stable, kind, knowledgeable adult of any sex, of either sex, any sex, whatever, to be able to stay home with the kids and to give them a solid routine and someone who is loving and emotionally present and available to make them feel safe in the world. I mean, that is the ideal nest in which to raise babies and to have, a partner who is a breadwinner or whatever situation. But and I say that not as someone who has kids, but as someone who was a kid. And my mom was able to stay home until I was about 3.5. And that made a huge, huge difference in, I mean, I would have been even more of a mess if that hadn't been the case. Anyway, Corinne goes on, it's a bit like running a marathon with a 5 kilogram weight on each foot. Raising children is. And don't talk to me about these new fathers who get a lot more involved in the home than previous male generations did. True, they may know how to change a diaper and bottle feed the baby, but that doesn't mean that they sacrifice their careers. The proof, when men become fathers, their professional activities increase and they devote more time to their jobs. The opposite of women. Now, clearly she's talking about straight couples. I, uh, I guess it depends on the couple. I mean, you hear plenty of stories on Reddit and other places where it's a straight couple and the man stays home. So I think that is becoming, a stay at home dad is becoming more and more of a thing, at least in the States. I don't know about anywhere else, but I think she's just being a little bit too snarky there. Maybe it's a French thing, whatever. Okay, reason number 35. When the child appears, the father disappears. Miss Corinne got a little bitterness towards men, it seems, but let's see what she has to say here. Fathers are not what they used to be. He's no longer the head of the household, by divine right, whom all obey without a murmur. True, and also better. A lot of sociologists and shrinks yammer on about the death of the father and the decline of authority. In fact, it is not the father who is dead, it is his power to make others jump that has disappeared. You won't hear me complain. Not that we're living in a permissive society, quite the opposite. But today, obedience is imposed on us by the system, not by individuals. Interesting. She continues, there are no fathers left, only progenitors. And by progenitors, I am pretty sure she is using a fancy word for. By progenitors, I'm going to assume she's using it as a fancy word for baby daddy. But she may mean it in some other way, but essentially it is a scientific word for baby daddy. And there's more. Becoming a father means a man's role is reduced to just barely supporting his family. A man no longer decides to become a father. 50 years ago, it was the men who turned women into mothers, often against their wishes. Nowadays, the power relationship is reversed. Only motherhood is voluntary, not fatherhood. Um, hmm, well, that may have been true in 2007, but now, at least in the States, motherhood is involuntary still, or as well. Carrying on to reason number 36 of the 40 good reasons not to have kids. Today's child is the perfect child. Welcome to the best of all possible worlds. Being a parent means closely guarding the health of our dear kids. The scourge of parents is the hyperactive child, a newly invented malady. A few years ago, a kid like that was just a pain in the ass. He awakes at sunrise with a bugle call, and throughout the day, one idiocy follows another. He talks nonstop and yells at the least little annoyance. But what is even more worrisome is that it's hard to distinguish the hyperactive child from any other kid. He's just a contemporary child, but worse. And then she says, in that great lottery of the chromosomes, you might just find yourself saddled with a hyperactive, obese child. And remember, this is 2007. She had no idea how bad it was going to get and how fast. And so the moral of this chapter for me is you have no idea what you're going to spin in the gene lottery, and that is a chance you take with having kids. And I am too risk averse to have gone through with that. Number 37, danger, child ahead. Children are dangerous. They can bring on lawsuits and cost you your freedom. Because these innocent little creatures are quite ready to denounce their parents and turn them over to the authorities without a second thought. And then she tells a couple of stories about some real bad seeds. And this is something I didn't even think of would appear in this book. But it is 40 reasons. And one of them is that you never know if you're going to give birth to the spawn of Satan. One story she tells, it happened to a friend of mine. His 13-year-old daughter, in a mood one day, told them at school that her father had tied her to the bed. The police got involved. The parents were called in for interrogation, and it took them months to establish their innocence. It has to be noted here that Ségolène Royal's 1997 directive instructed school authorities that they should never doubt the word of children who claim to have been abused. And that is a cautionary tale that has happened many times now. Children are a lot more savvy these days with speaking to authorities and such. Than they were back in the day. It would never even have occurred to me to say that I, was being AB used. Corinne goes on. You don't even have to be accused by your child. Just taking her photograph can get you into trouble with the law. In 2005, a Dutch artist, Kiki Lamers, got an 8-month suspended prison sentence and a $5,000 fine for having taken nude photographs of her own children to use for her own paintings. And that is really sad. I mean, I grew up in the 70s. I was a little kid in the 70s, and there are pictures of me naked in the tub with my 2 twin brothers, and we're a couple of years apart. I mean, that was just no big deal in the 70s. I guess we didn't realize like how many creeps were around, and maybe Were there not as many creeps in the 70s? I don't know. Number 38. Why wear yourself out for a future that doesn't include you? Well, that is sage advice, and having kids will wear you out, especially if you're a woman or the person giving birth. Corinne says, you are going to have your child on your hands for decades, a burden from which you will find it difficult to escape. My advice, if you really want to be a host to a parasite, get a gigolo. It's more fun, and at least you'll know what you're getting into. For a long time, children were seen as parasites, not always desired. Far from it, their existence itself was rather uncertain. One is reminded somewhat of the value that Montaigne, in his essays, attributed to his own children, almost all of whom died young. I prefer a good book to a child, he said, in effect. It is true that every newborn is the result of its parents' desire, but also that the child will be a parasite to its family and relatives for years. Today, children are invariably seen as miracles. This is not necessarily good news, because the youths they cannot help becoming are destined to end up as failures and outsiders. And she goes on to talk about how difficult things are for young people these days with impossible housing costs and stagnation in wages and lack of decent jobs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and how that is a common reason why this book, again, written 2007, and it's only more true today. So many people are just like, I can't afford to have kids. Why? Um, and she further goes on to discuss what future will your kids have to deal with the state of the planet and why doom them to that. And of course, 2007, here we are in 2024, and that is only more true. So, here we are finally at number 39, almost there. The 39th reason of the 40 good reasons not to have children. There are too many children in the world. All right, and check this out. She wrote this in 2007. I'm really sorry, you guys. I don't mean to keep being a broken record and saying that over and over again, but it just blows my mind. 2007, she wrote this. Too much stuff, too many cafes, so French, too many shops, too many brands of organic whole wheat bread, too many people. The world's population is now 6.5 billion, and in 2030, it will be close to 8 billion. We passed 8 billion, and it's 2024. Let's just think about that. 8 billion people. We've already surpassed what was thought to be something 6 years in the future. So, how many people will there be in 2030? And I do usually get a lot of very religious folks in the comments telling me, quoting scripture, things like, be fruitful and multiply. I would just like to say that even if the Christian Bible, even if every word of it is true, we can all agree that it was written about 2,000 years ago, which was the Bronze Age. So we done been fruitful and multiplied many times over. We can chill now. She goes on. We keep increasing our consumption. Does it really make any sense for us to have children who will consume even more? And always to the detriment of the world's poorest? Nobody needs our kids because we and they are spoiled brats. The spoiled brats of a planet that is heading straight for annihilation. If you live in Europe or America, then having kids is immoral. Now, that is a strong statement. I'm sure she got a lot of crap for that. But I feel that. I agree. I have to agree with her. And she continues and goes on to say, always wasting more limited resources for a voracious lifestyle, meaning the lifestyle of Europe and America. And nobody can argue with that. She says, always overspending, always guzzling gas, always more destructive of the environment. To have a kid in a rich country is not the act of a citizen. The state should be helping those who decide not to have children. Amen, sister. And at last, number 40, the final reason of the 40 good reasons not to have children. Reject the absurd 10 commandments of the good parent. And I can't read the whole description for each one, but they are: 1, your children are more important than you. 2, you must teach them the gentle values, tolerance of others, and honesty that nobody respects. 3, you must desire their well being. Nobody knows what that really means. 4, keep them busy at all times in as many ways as possible. 5, you must be an example to them. No drugs, no drinking, no orgies at home. 6, you will protect your children from the many dangers that threaten them, since they are potential victims. 7, you must help your children adapt, whatever that means. 8, you must never hit them. You will neither punish nor scold. 9, you will talk to them as much as possible. And 10, you will always be positive. Childhood is still the only true paradise. In conclusion, Corinne says, children, no thanks. No kids, thanks. It's better that way. Women, the future of our planet depends on you. The last freedom is to choose not to. I would prefer not to have children, not to work, not to watch the news on television, not to be part of this economic competition. You too, you could decide that you would prefer not to. Not twos of the world, my sisters and brothers, let us stay disunited, skeptical, and if possible, without descendants. And that is the end of our 4-part series on Corinne Maier's fantastic book. I really enjoyed that book, and I obviously did not read the whole book in this series. I just, picked little parts of it here and there. So you can decide for yourselves if you want to read the whole book. But if you have stuck around to the end, I thank you so much. Props to you guys. It really helps the algorithm the longer that you watch. And so anyone who sticks around to the end of listening to me ramble, I really appreciate it. So thank you so much, guys. I will see you in the next video.